Welcome to another message from the Mercy Movement. I'm Vanessa Denha Garmo, along with our foundress of the Divine Mercy Center, Catherine Lanny's with us. Catherine.
Hello.
And our guest today is Father Alex Kratz, and he is from the St. Joseph Chapel and the Marian Shrine in Pontiac. Father Alex, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.
And we're talking about Father's Day is approaching and a devotion to St. Joseph. And you have a beautiful little St. Joseph Chapel in Pontiac, Michigan, Father Alex, that you could talk to us about. But we don't often hear a lot about St. Joseph. Is that because he didn't say much, if anything, in the Bible? He didn't have a spoken word in the Bible, Father Alex?
Well, I mean, that's true. I don't know why we don't talk a lot about him. I think we are more. A book came out recently about consecration of St. Joseph. So I think really in the last few hundred years, his star has been rising, to kind of use that metaphor. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's probably true. He's overshadowed by the Blessed Mother, and in some ways rightly so, of course. But I think we're recognizing that with the crisis of fatherhood and families and now employment with the coronavirus, St. Joseph has a huge role to play to restabilize our disintegrating civilization. Without the family and marriage, there's no future. And we're seeing that we just cannot take that for granted. And so a great saint like him is really a man for our times.
Mm-hmm. For our times. You know, Catherine, the Divine Mercy Center, there's many feast days and holidays that are celebrated, of course, with St. Faustina and the Divine Mercy, and the Rosary for the Blessed Mother. But speak to our viewers about the importance of fathers and Father's Day as it relates to St. Joseph and the message that you have for Divine Mercy Center members.
The Lord put it in my heart a few years ago, probably about 3 or 4 years ago, that we need to bring St. Joseph back up to the front of the church, literally and also in our hearts, because being the foster father of Jesus, that had to be a tremendous responsibility for him. We can only imagine. But we see today the responsibility of fatherhood and how critical it is to have a good, healthy, balanced life for a family when the father does have a serious input in the family. There's so much man-hating these days, unfortunately, that takes place, and I think so many times the men are just like pushed off to the side, or their importance in the family for protecting the family and guiding the family is negated, and you could see the effect that it has in families. There's many households that are greatly blessed to have good mothers, and that's an important thing, of course, absolutely. But the father brings a special element to a marital relationship and in the household that is quite profound. So we have, and in fact, with all the statues and things that we have in the chapel here at Divine Mercy Center, St. Joseph candles burn like crazy here. People have, they look to him, and rightly so. We need, the church was entrusted to him, and so we need that fatherly guidance, that strong, silent presence that St. Joseph offers, and that a father offers in his household.
So I recently started doing intercessory prayer for my husband, as my husband and father and my daughter, to St. Joseph, Catherine and Father Alex. Father Alex, what would you say to women listening, moms, wives, daughters, about intercessory prayer to St. Joseph for the men in their life?
Well, I think, we all need encouragement to live up to the role, the God-given role, the God-called role that we've, received. But without encouragement, we often don't live up to that potential. I think I read somewhere that 75% of vocations never come to fruition because young people aren't encouraged. We can say that also about men, including men who are already married, that there can be a hesitation without the encouragement from certainly their wives and even other fellow men, that some men don't really realize how pivotal and important their role, their modeling is. Other people are watching, including their kids, and sometimes they just don't realize that or underestimate that. And so I think encouragement really is a charism, and I think wives or significant others, women in their lives who encourage them to live as godly men, like Psalm 112 talks about, the righteous man who cares about the poor, and lives the virtues that St. Joseph did, that really has a sanctifying effect on civilization and our neighborhoods, our families, our parishes. So, a lot of us just don't reach our potential without others that really kind of call us to that.
Mm-hmm. A question to both of you can each answer it is that when we talk about a devotion to St. Joseph or a consecration to St. Joseph, what does that mean? What does that look like? Either one of you want to answer that?
I'll defer to Catherine if you have some thoughts on that.
A devotion to St. Joseph or a consecration to St. Joseph, of course, everything is consecrated to God through the Blessed Virgin or through the intercession of St. Joseph. And entrusting, our families, our children, our husbands to St. Joseph is, it's one of the most important things that we can do today, because the role of the father is seriously lacking. And like I said, you could see and note the difference of a household that the father is respected in, and it gives a great balance. And I guess that's what men really need, and to have that kind of respect for their position in the family, the same way the woman needs to be honored and respected for her position in the family. I mean, some of the most profound lessons of my lifetime that I think about even these days all the time, that I learned from my father, who was a very kind of private man in his prayer life, businessman, truck driver, store owner, fruit market, all that kind of stuff. Tough guy, very tough, grew up on the streets. But I remember one of the most profound, earliest memories of my father was, early in the morning, having to go to the bathroom and walking across the kitchen to get to the bathroom where the big picture window was, and looking out and seeing my father kneeling before the statue of the Blessed Mother in the middle of the backyard. And I took my breath away. I never knew he did that. And so when he came home at night and I said to him, "Daddy, I saw you this morning kneeling in the yard before the statue of Blessed Mother. And aren't you ashamed? I mean, aren't you embarrassed or ashamed? I mean, what if our neighbors see you?" And he goes, No, I do that every morning. I just make the genuflect and say a little prayer to Blessed Mother to protect the family while I'm gone at work. I don't know, maybe I'm not going to get out of my truck tomorrow or today or whatever. And that impacted me at a most poignant point in my life on my deathbed. That memory came to me on my deathbed, because that kind of faith gave me the courage to get back up in my spirit and pray for Jesus to come and to spare me and Our Lady. And it spared my life. That was one of the main things. So through life. And, I the other day I was having a conversation with my daughter, Benedetta, my middle daughter. And as we were in conversation talking about work, her daughter mouthed something back to her father. And, she was really on it, and she reprimanded her fiercely. Mm-hmm. And, and unfortunately I'm listening, I'm on the phone, but, yeah. It touched my heart. And I said, I taught her something well, yeah. And but that she should respect her father and not just, talk back or anything. Mm-hmm. And it was beautiful. And I was proud of her for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really important. We as wives have a role in valuing the men in our lives, the husbands in our lives, to show our children the examples of how important the father is. And you mentioned faith, and Father Alex, when we do a devotion, to St. Joseph, and faith has got to be the number one priority when we do that. We can't just do these devotions without faith in God.
Yeah, well, it's not a devotion without faith. And I think, kind of going back to your prior question, how do we express devotion? It can be as simple as a conversation with St. Joseph. We have our statues from the cathedral in Saginaw that the renovators were able to get for us. And I sometimes tell people, just go up there and talk to St. Joseph. Of course, it's the statue, but it's a representation of course, St. Joseph in heaven, who at least private revelation says is above the Seraphim, just under the Blessed Mother, but highly exalted. Have a conversation with like a spiritual father. And, you know, the two words I like to kind of ascribe to him is he's a guardian and a guide. And he's certainly our patron in pilgrimage ministry. He guides us. Oftentimes we have answered prayers. I ask all our pilgrims to pray the 30-day prayer to St. Joseph for protection for our pilgrimage group. But he's also a guide. We often, like right now as a country, as a civilization, we're in unnavigated, uncharted waters with this pandemic. And there's a lot of uncertainty. And that creates a lot of anxiety. And anxiety can lead to a lack of faith. And so St. Joseph is the man of great faith who had his own uncharted waters when the Blessed Mother was pregnant. You know, this kind of quandary that God allowed him to suffer, a trial of faith. Well, we're in that too. And he can help us with that. So a simple conversation, light a candle, or you can, you know, do everything like we do on First Wednesdays or others with the consecration of St. Joseph, you know, and something more formal. But in the end, that's really what it comes down to. But faith has to lead to fidelity. And I think being faithful, one saint said, the only thing that frightens me is infidelity. And I think that's true of any saint or anybody trying to be holy. And he can help us be faithful in tough times. And I think he does.
So, Father Alex, can you share with our viewers today more information about the St. Joseph Chapel in Pontiac and the Marian Shrine at your place in Pontiac? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think just like the Divine Mercy Center, we're, as far as I know, the only place that has been closed and reopened in the last 30 years. I think we share that kind of, you could say, miraculous distinction. Again, it's God's grace, God's miracle. But it was part of a 3-campus parish. And by the grace of God, we were able to purchase it from St. Damien Parish in Pontiac as kind of our ministry headquarters for pilgrimage. But, you know, as we came here, we realized that really God had a plan for the place. And our ministry name is Terra Sancta. It means Holy Land. And we like to say we brought Terra Sancta to Terra Sancta in Pontiac. That is, it was already a holy place. Decades of prayer went on here with especially devotion of the Blessed Mother. But we recognize at St. Joseph Chapel that he holds a special place there. It's really a Holy Family kind of shrine because, of course, the Eucharist is here too. And it's a place, an oasis for prayer and for peace. It's not only our ministry headquarters, but a place where I think it kind of fits a little niche, I think like the Divine Mercy Center, where people need devotional or alternative spirituality, Catholic spirituality, of course, that perhaps isn't always available in every parish, and to really ramp up their spiritual lives. So it's not just a ministry headquarters for pilgrimage to the Holy Land, but to help us on our pilgrimage here, because there's so much discouragement. And I think when Catholics come together for fervent worship with the Eucharist and authentic devotions, you know, the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, of course, the Rosary and Eucharistic adoration, they come away refreshed and, like St. Joseph, can proceed on their journey. So we're here right near St. Joseph Hospital, right down the street. And we're open on Tuesdays and Saturdays for Mass at noon.
Wow. Catherine, Father Alex talked about the Holy Family being present at the St. Joseph Center and the Marian Shrine. Father Alex, actually, before we get to that, can you explain the Marian Shrine and the statues you have there and the documented miracles, just real quick for people watching?
Well, you know, these are miracles that were either sworn in front of the priest at the time, Father Jarzembowski, or just kind of alleged. So I don't want to, you know, put this on par with apparitions. It's nothing like
yeah,
that.
it's not, yes.
For sure. So just to make that clear distinction. But we have a beautiful white statue of the Sorrowful and Immaculate Heart of Mary. It's white Carrara marble from Italy. And Father Jarzembowski, who built up the shrine, bought it in 1952 as part of living the Fatima message. And apparently after it was vandalized, we think sometime in the 60s, you can see the battle wounds of the Blessed Mother, actual chips in her knee of the marble, that she began to lacrimate or weep. And there's actually a faint tear channel down her left cheekbone. It's evident to everybody who looks. You have to look a little closely, but it's definitely there. And so that's part of it. And perhaps, of course, it's not that she felt pain in the stone of the statue, but sorrow that people don't come to her son Jesus for redemption, and benefit from the shedding of his precious blood. It is also said in 1960, and there's sworn testimony to this, that she came alive from the waist on up, including the miracle of the eyes. And so we typed up that testimony there in the little shrine grotto. All to say, because I don't want to belabor the miraculous of what happened there among the 8 people that were praying to the Blessed Mother then, that Mary is intimately, like St. Joseph, involved in the life of the church in our lives and wants to be. And if we but turn to them for assistance, we can grow in our union with Jesus and the Holy Trinity. So the Blessed Mother and St. Joseph are not abstract, distant, personalities locked away in heaven. They very much want to be in our lives. I think even your daughter said when she went to our statue of Our Lady of the Cape that she felt like she was talking to her.
Yeah.
She told me that, or maybe you told me that from her.
She told you that in confession.
Okay, you remember.
When I had her go to confession.
I was trying to remember how that worked. Yeah, yeah,
She told you that in confession, yeah.
And she didn't make that up. I mean, that's from her lips, unsolicited.
Yeah, and that was, she was even younger than, I think she was about 10 at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So they care about us, and we can turn to them in these times.
Yeah. Catherine, Father Alex mentioned the Holy Family, and how important is the Holy Family to the families that come to the Divine Mercy Center for refuge, for peace, for healing?
It's critical. For us, we have, we probably have, I don't know, around 70 prayer ministers, and then we have home intercessors. But throughout the week, prayer ministers are here in the chapel to pray with anybody that comes in. But, and there's everything. There's everything. It's a neighborhood where we have just about everything, and, people from every walk of life. But one particular day, as I'm listening to Father talk, one particular day stands out in my mind where one of the young women in the ministry was raped, and it was horrible. It was tragic. It just devastated her to the point of she couldn't eat and she couldn't sleep. And so after only a few short days, she came here to the center, and she was visibly I don't even know devastated doesn't even explain the words, but the worst part of all of it was that she was so afraid to close her eyes to sleep. She was so afraid. And we had on that day several prayer ministers that were here, and 2 of them, a couple, husband and wife, that were, I don't know, they're probably, I don't know, in their 70s, early 70s, something like that. Longtime members, prayer ministers, and very dedicated to the ministry, just took her in, and the other prayer ministers, were talking to her and whatever. And of course, we always have soups here and served lunches and stuff, so we made sure that she ate. But as she was able, but she was just petrified. She was just petrified. And that particular day, we have exposition of the Blessed Sacrament daily, but at that particular time, while she was there, we had exposition. And we told her, listen, just come on up, lay down in the first pew. And we had blankets, pillows, and whatever. And his name was Ralph. Ralph and Sylvia sat right, one at her head and one at her feet. And the other prayer ministers were around her. And she fell asleep, and she slept for hours until closing. And when she woke up, she was obviously restored. She was a different person, but left the Divine Mercy Center. Of course, we prayed with her and everything else. Left the Divine Mercy Center with a whole renewed spirit in her and a much lighter burden. I will never forget that day. I will never, ever forget that day. She was all of our child, you know, every one of us, especially just having that father there, sitting at her head. It's like standing guard and watching her and saying, you can close your eyes. And the mother making sure she had her some soup, you know, a little bit, but ate some soup. And that the rest of them were watching and taking guard for her. You know, I don't even, words don't give it justice. You know, that's one of many kinds of situations.
Talk about family.
And we are a family. When any one of us or our children hurt, we hurt for each other.
Yeah. Before we let you go, I just want to end with this, and you can each share and answer this. But as we talk about Father's Day and our father's birthdays or Christmas or whatever the holiday may be for the men in our lives, what can we share with them as it relates to Saint Joseph to strengthen and so they can grow in faith? Catherine, I'll start with you and end with Father Alex. What about part of Saint Joseph can we bring to the men in our lives on these holidays that they celebrate with them?
Usually men kind of, you know, keep things inside. So, you know, I think just being who we are as women of God and saying and letting them understand that they are greatly loved, they're deeply loved and appreciated, but also respected. That's something that has kind of gone out the window these days that really speaks volumes to men. Men need to know that they are respected. And if families would just allow men to take that role that God's called them to in a healthy, very balanced, fatherly way, the world would be different. I'm assured of it. But just letting them know that they're loved, appreciated, but respected.
Amen. How about you, Father Alex? What would you want to share with our listeners before we?
Well, you know, he was, St. Joseph appeared at the last apparition of Our Lady of Fatima in October 13th, and he, with the child Jesus, blessed the world 3 times at the sign of the cross. And so what that is telling us is St. Joseph is a family man. He cares about the family of humanity, and that our men can go to St. Joseph for any family need, employment, you know, strengthening of marriages, how to deal with difficult children, difficulties at work, unemployment, how to fix things. And so he's a practical saint like St. Anthony. You know, in Italy, my mother tells me, she's Italian too, Il Santo, the saint, is not St. Francis, it's St. Anthony. He's a practical saint. He helps you find St. Joseph is that way too. A lot of people like to go to him because they have practical needs. How to fix things, getting a job. A lady, one of our volunteers told us her son got a job. She prayed to St. Joseph for her son, and by gosh, he got a job. So go to him for anything, because life is about practicalities, and that's how we build up, you know, God's kingdom and bring people to Christ. So go to him for anything, big or small. And in so doing, you can bless the family of humanity and your own family like St. Joseph did that last apparition of Fatima.
That's beautiful. I love it. The saint of practicality. Thank you so much, Father Alex, for joining Catherine and I here on this latest message of the Mercy Movement.
Our pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank you, Father.
Thanks.
My pleasure.
Catch you guys all next time, okay? Thanks for being with us. God bless.
God bless you.